Hey guys, so I want to go over a couple more power tools before we actually get out here and start using them. I usually don't have you demonstrate these from the straight get-go because you may not use all of them. But as you get to the point where you're like, oh, I need to use the circular saw, then that's when you say, hey, Wingert, I need to use the circular saw. And though you've taken a safety test on it, you have to demonstrate safe use to me before you can use it on your own. So then we'll just individually do that. And basically by the end of working in shop, you'll have demonstrated all three of these because I'll probably pull you over even if you don't need it so that you're tested. But I want to go over just a couple basics so you kind of know what they are and you know what you're using. So let's start with the jig saw. The jig saw is one that is pretty easy to use. Some people call it a saber saw. But when we undo the cord here, you're going to see that it has a blade at this end. This is called the foot, or the base of it, but it's the foot. And the blade on this one, if I get closer to you, it actually points away from the user. So you can see it's away from the user and its teeth are pointed up. So when you cut with this, you're going to place it down. Let's say this was my project. You're going to place this down with the shoe, the base here, flat on the board. That blade is going to come down below. So it's really important when you're using this saw that you are not cutting where it's going to cut into your bottom surface. If you were working on a metal table, it's obviously not going to cut that. It's just going to break the blade. Also, this blade is going to be damaged kind of easy because it's kind of fragile. So if you bind the blade, as you can see, this one's not straight. If I were holding that straight, it's not straight. That's because a lot of times we use this. It's great to cut circles and cut in the middle, like cut a square out. But students will start leaning as they do that circle, and it binds the blade. If you notice, the blade is changing colors. As you pull it out, if it's got some blue or almost iridescent look to it, that is usually because it's gotten too hot. That means that somebody has binded that blade. Also, if it's starting to smoke or you smell hot wood, then you need to back off. So you're going to go in, you're going to make sure that this is flat against the board, that nothing is going to catch underneath it. So make sure that you don't have the cord under it because it can cut it, and then you're up a creek at that point. This red button here is what's going to be our trigger. On some, you actually have to push this button to the side and then pull that trigger. On others, it's just simply a trigger. It just depends on their safety. And then you're going to take, and you start at the edge, and you're going to just work your way in and nice and even go across that board. It's not the fastest saw in the world. It really depends on what blade's on it, like how dull or how sharp, but it is not going to be super quick. But you can make shapes with it. You could go in, if I had a board that was solid and I wanted to cut a square out of it or a circle out of it, you would first make a hole that is bigger than your blade, then your blade could go in and cut it. It's important if you're doing a corner that you take small cuts, or even a sharp turn that we take small cuts, again, so we don't twist or bind this blade. That's one of the things that I see is the biggest problem with students using it in our shop is they bind the blade and then they mess it up. Also, because they are pushing on it towards one side, sometimes this foot needs to be adjusted. And it's simply a remove a screw, straighten it up, and tighten it up. If you are using this or you go to use it and you notice that the blade looks bent or it looks damaged, then you need to let us know so that we can get it switched out. As far as safety goes on it, keeping debris clear, making sure that nothing is underneath it. Your left hand, or if you're left-handed, your right hand, your opposite hand, you should either not have on the project or far away from it. Or what I do to keep myself safe is I just put it up here on the front of it. It's away from the blade. There's no chance that I'm going to hold down here at the bottom of it and get my fingers. And then just don't bind the blade. Don't push on it too quickly. So that's the very simple basis of our jigsaw. I should also say another safety that might be on the safety test is to put the blade in so that it's pointing away from you and the teeth are up. The next thing is the orbital sander, and you may have different ones. This one, you actually have to clamp the sandpaper down. There's these little holders. It loosens these flaps, and then you can add sandpaper to it or remove it. And then you just take, and they just you push them up and in, and they hook on, and that just tightens that back up so that it can't move here. The orbital sander is very easy to use. You simply push, once it's plugged in, push the buttons up here at the front, keep it flat on the board. You are going to put a little bit of pressure, but you are not bogging it down. You shouldn't hear the motor in the piece of equipment sound like kind of quieter or bogged down. You're going to let it kind of shimmy and bounce on that board, because that's what's going to do the sanding. It is important to make sure that you are in a well-ventilated area, that you, again, are not pushing down, and that you should, when we talk about finishing, we're going to talk about sanding with the board, with the grain. So with an orbital, you can kind of go more in a circular pattern to some extent, but you want to make sure that you are not staying in one area too long and damaging that. We'll talk about the belt sander and hand sanding later, and that will be a little more talk about the importance of your sanding patterns and your pressure. Sometimes we have orbital sanders too that the papers just stick onto it. It's a latch and hook type system where it's almost like Velcro sticking on it, and it has little holes in it, and it's circled. That's what mine is at home, is the same thing. This bag on the back of it is the dust collector. It's good to periodically take it off. You just twist and pull it off, which I'm not going to do right now because I really don't want to be covered in sawdust. And then shake it out of the trash can. Here, as long as we get it cleaned up in the trash can, we're good. It is important in our wood shop, because we are a wood shop and metal shop, that we get our sawdust cleaned. Sawdust is combustible on its own, and then when you add in the fact that we have heat and fire in here, you're looking for a real hot mess real quick. So it is going to be vital. You're going to hear me nag at you a lot about sweeping properly, cleaning up your messes, and not leaving sawdust around. Lastly, we have the circular saw. A lot of people will say, oh, you mean the Skill saw? Well, Skill is a brand, and it just happens to be the brand that we have here. But the Skill saw is a circular saw. So the blade itself is circular. It goes in a circular motion. You can carry this one about. They even have some now that are cordless, just not what we have. So just like with the Jig Saw, you want to make sure that you have nothing below you. You also need to have your project lifted. Usually we have students who use this on the floor, but then they put blocks like the one sitting up there underneath it, another block of wood. So whenever you are going to use this, you're going to have your piece of lumber. This, again, is the shoe. It's going to fit flat against the board. Over here on this side is your blade. Notice it goes lower than the board. I'm actually not even flat on the table. That's flat. It needs to stay flat at all times. The other thing is, if you want to check, or if you have to start a little ways into the board, you can bring this lever up, and you can see that's moving the guard. Normally, you do not want to start with that up just for giggles. The reason why that would be up is if I had to stop in the middle of my board, now I have to slide back in, I'm going to have to pull this up to get it to fit. If I'm just checking to see, am I lined up well, you can do that. There's actually little, I guess we could say like teeth or little cutouts on the notches would be a good word there. There's little notches up here. And if you line up with that, like this notch right here lines up with the blade. So if I line up my line that I drew on with my pencil right here, I'm going to keep a straight shot. This is great for, I mean, you can use it on 2x4s, but it's great for if you're trying to cut a large sheet of wood and you want to get a nice long cut. When doing that, you want to use a chalk line and make sure and mark the whole board. That way you have a line to follow the whole way, because this is a little bit of freehand. And I've seen a lot go from starting out straight to having a nice curve in them. And depending on which way you curve, you may not be able to add that wood back to it. So some safety things. This is going to spin very quickly. This one is one that you need to be careful about using as you go across. Make sure that you don't have the cord underneath the board or anything else that would get cut. As you're cutting, so I kind of have it backwards here, how I'm holding it. The blade on this one, if I can adjust it in my hands here, the blade is actually, this is backwards to me, the blade is going upwards and away from me. So when I hold it, it's spinning like this and coming towards me. So it's sometimes likes to walk away with you too. So make sure you have a good handle on it. You're going to hold it with your right hand and hold it with your left hand. If you are left-handed, you can still use it in this fashion. Just be very careful because you're on this side of the blade. If you are ambidextrous or you're left-handed, but you have been forced to use your right hand a lot and you're comfortable with that, I would suggest using your right hand because it's just going to be more conducive to what you are doing. For right now, that's all I have on that one. We'll go over a couple more things before we take our safety tests on that. So your safety tests are going to include this saw, the jig saw, the sander, the drill, the table saw, miter saw, radial arm saw. I think one of my groups still has radial arm to talk about and finish up the miter. And I believe the belt sander. I think that's it. So we'll be going over those. And again, like I said before, we'll be doing those the day before Thanksgiving break. And then hopefully we'll start with demonstrations and projects that next day that we are back after break, which I believe is the following Wednesday. Again, and as always, if you have any questions or concerns, shoot me an email or ask me in class, and I'll be happy to help you out there. Have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you soon.